This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by Squarespace, the fastest, easiest, most convenient, and all-around best way to make your own website, portfolio, blog, or online store. Also, important, if you get a year of Squarespace, you will get a domain name tossed in there for free. So go to squarespace.com, use the promo code THUMBS for 10% off, and start making a totally sick-ass website.
Any domain name.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it has to be real. It has to be real. And someone else can't already have it, like Nick Breckon.cool.
Nobody had that.
They do now.
They do now.
NickBreckon.museum. Your new Squarespace site.
That's where your mom's journal pages are officially hosted.
Yeah.
Or they're ensconced.
Yeah, at nickbreckon.museum, the Nick Breckon Museum.
You could be a friend of the Nick Breckon Museum.
Choose the site of the Nick Breckon Museum.
Squarespace.
Squarespace.
Choose the site of the Nick Breckon Museum and choose well. You want a site that's mobile responsive and also just off the freeway.
Yeah.
And of personal significance to Nick Breckon. We've bulldozed his parents' house and put the Nick Breckon Museum.
We've bulldozed Nick's current apartment and replaced it with a museum to him.
That'd be fine.
It's March 9th, 2016.
This is Idle Thumbs 253. I'm pretty certain. And I'm Chris Remo.
I think I'm Nick Breckon.
I am absolutely positive that I am Jake Rodkin. I've never been more positive of anything in my life.
That's what a robot would say.
That's what a robot would say. I am Jake Rodkin. Yeah. And I am Jake Rodkin's consciousness encased in this
Nick Breckon Museum. You're the audio tour for
It's true. It's true. Yeah, there would be animatronics of you guys in my museum. It's entirely true.
And you'd press a button and we would say the current date and our names.
Right. Yeah, it's actually where I will just go to record the podcast eventually.
You'll record the Nick Breckon Museum podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, what?
Oh, video games.
Oh, museums.
Yeah, I have played some hours of Far Cry Primal. And man,
I could not.
Yeah, I know you tried.
I tried to play that game.
Yeah, and it just wouldn't launch.
It would not launch.
Would you say?
PC.
Oh, it wouldn't launch.
Yeah,
it wasn't that like you bounced off it. It was that it bounced off your sick rig.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Yeah, that Uplay thing, not doing anyone any favors.
No.
Yeah. I had a few false starts thanks to Uplay, and then eventually I got it working somehow.
Launching that game from Steam is like launching a piece of spyware where just one window pops up, then the next window pops up, then another window pops up, and then everything just closes down. And you're like, there's something on my computer now doing something, but it's not a game.
I had the experience of thinking that I was like becoming even more absent-minded than I actually am, because I would launch it, and then something would come up, and then the windows would just disappear, and I would sort of be distracted by something, and then I'd look back and be like, I could have sworn I launched Far Cry Primal, huh? That's weird. And then I would have to do it 2 more times, and then eventually Uplay and Steam would like talk to each other correctly or whatever, and it would load. Anyway, stop it, Ubisoft. Stop it with the Uplay. Nobody needs it.
But at the end of the day, you played Far Cry Primal.
I did. Oh man,
it lived up to its name.
Speaking of which, so in the game there's something called the Ubisoft Club, which is like a loyalty program or something. Yeah,
it's been from.
Well, that's
my
the
grandfather
thing.
was a member.
Like, so in the game, this game has crafting and different weapons and items and stuff. And there's an item in the game that's like, this item is exclusive to the Ubisoft Club, and I didn't have it. And I was so certain that it was going to be a club. Like, because in this game, you hit people with clubs. And then it wasn't. It was like a shard that you throw at enemies. And I was really bummed out
that
the Ubisoft Club official item was not the Ubisoft Club. Yeah. So that was a bummer. Anyway, as far as
that was Far Cry Primal.
Yeah.
that's all you need to know.
I mean, my ambivalence about the Ubisoft Club is... You could translate it out.
Sure.
It's at this point, I feel like it's hard to not be ambivalent about mainline Ubisoft games, just in general. playing an Ubisoft open world game at this point, it's not so much that it's like specifically Far Cry or specifically Assassin's Creed has, an annualized franchise strategy. It's like Ubisoft itself is that, and I'm just playing Ubisoft 2016 right now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it's the Assassin's Creed and Far Cry franchises have approximated each other so much to the point that now even Far Cry can apparently just take place in like any historical era as well. Far Cry Primal is set in...
So you just get the first person or the third person one, and that's like...
Yeah, basically. This is a Stone Age set game, which is a really cool idea, actually, and I like that component of it a lot.
I actually want to mention something that was sort of circulating around the internet. Somebody noticed that the map of Far Cry 4, if you overlay it on top of the map of Far Cry Primal, it is more or less identical. Like the rivers and lakes are in the exact same spot.
That's not surprising to me at all.
Which is not surprising, but then also made me like really sad that wasn't part of like the lore of the thing that you were actually playing in the same spot.
You don't think that's going to be part of the lore?
Oh, I hope it is.
If it
really
wasn't
do.
Before, it's going to be now. Now there's going to be like Far Cry in between some era. Colonial shithead, the prior generation Far Cry.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that it can be because the place that those two games are set
that's the thing.
Are declared geographically.
Oh, but they started
Far Cry
with
Primal is explicitly in Central Europe, I believe.
Right.
Or like what is now, what would now be considered Central Europe.
Yeah, and Far Cry 4 was in what, Mongolia or thereabouts?
It was in
Himalayas, yeah. So
that goes one of like three ways, right? One, government conspiracy, and this piece of terrain is stamped everywhere. Two, Far Cry games are a subset of the Assassin's Creed video game testing multiverse.
Yeah. Yes.
Three, they introduce some sort of real-time strategy terraforming game where one of the templates that you can stamp into your planet is this map.
Yeah.
I guess they just like that map.
That, so I mean, to that point, like when you start this game, you're given it the year, and I think it starts with the current year, and you hear just a black screen with
the current year.
White...
The year is 2016.
I don't know. I mean, roughly that, and then
really
you hear not the like eagle sounds, but you hear like a streetscape of the modern era, and then the year starts ticking backwards, and as it goes backwards, it ticks through like just
all the Far
every
Cries.
year and decade, going all the way back until it gets to
Assassin's Creed.
You hear a guy talking real fast for a while.
But that's the thing. Like you start because you get back to like the Renaissance era, and you hear people sort of speaking Italian, and it's clearly supposed to sound like our envisioning of what the Renaissance sounds like. And you only hear each of these for a second or two each. But because there are so few games set in different historical eras, and because
it's just
such big examples of them are Assassin's Creed, it just felt like, okay, Ubisoft now just has like their meta Ubisoft franchise, which is just like fuck guys up throughout history, and that's
it's not street life.
Slide
sounds.
down a
It's
slope,
just murders,
craft
just
the thing, kill a guy, through all of history.
Yeah. And so I didn't really play Far Cry 4, and so the direct. A lot of people have made the criticism that this game is basically just a reskin of Far Cry 4.
Do you think it started as that? Do you think this started off as Far Cry 4 Blood Dragon?
I think that
Primal.
I think that I don't know how it started out in terms of branding, but I think that was always kind of. I remember when people asked, "Is Far Cry 4 going to have a spinoff like Blood Dragon?" And then the
teaser thing for this got put out. Everybody sort of assumed it was going to be
right. It gives the impression of maybe it started off that size and got bigger.
Yeah, the creative director even said like, "Oh, not exactly, but like we've got something really surprising for you." So it sounds like this was always built on like intended to be built on the back of that game.
Right, but then maybe it lost its 4 and rolled up into being a full SKU, and that it's like
who knows?
Just kind of because the fact that it's on the same world map implies that maybe at one point this was Far Cry 4 Primal.
Right. And a lot of people have said that it very much feels that way, not just in terms of the world map, but in terms of the overall structure in the game. And that's not surprising to me because even not having played Far Cry 4 specifically, the last one I played was Far Cry 3. It just feels like the increasingly refined and set in stone Ubisoft open world formula. It just really feels like something that has been kind of averaged out to like this specific experience. And in some ways it's really cool. I mean, in some ways it feels bigger than Ubisoft, right? I mean, a couple weeks ago I talked about Tomb Raider or Rise of the Tomb Raider, and was also surprised to find like, oh, that has all of this crafting stuff and exploration and open world, and it feels very, very similar to this game. I mean, down to the fact that like you're hunting wild animals with a bow and skinning them, and then those things are being used to create, food and utility items and weapons and ammo, and you're collecting wood and minerals. I mean, it's shockingly similar. It's just there is a certain version of this that is the sort of like sanctioned AAA version of survival, crafting, exploration, open world, and it is sort of merged with the like old Far Cry open world shooter and the Assassin's Creed open world like traversal and mission based thing into this just like mega experience. And part of it works really well.
You'd call it maybe an immersive simulation.
Yeah, right, exactly. Part of it, well, it does have some immersive sim elements. You can light stuff on fire whenever you want, which is sort of a classic Far Cry hallmark at this point. It's very easy to light yourself on fire.
Do you have to invent fire first?
No, you know how to do fire.
Canceled.
Like for the whole game, pretty much, yeah.
How could they make a caveman game that has crafting and has fire propagation as the hallmark of Far Cry, but they don't make you fucking invent fire from nothing first?
Maybe that happens in one of the cutscenes. So that actually speaks to something else that is actually really ambitious and interesting about this game. But even that I'm sort of ambivalent about, which is they did this really sort of amazing thing where they hired 2 linguists to try and reconstruct like Proto-Indo-European languages that led to, I mean, millennia back, sort of were the forerunners of modern Indo-European languages. And so all of the dialogue in the game is acted in this way. I mean, none of it is English or any other sort of modern language. It's all delivered in this.
It's like a fake proto-language?
Yeah, that apparently was sort of reconstructed by academics. I mean, I who knows, right, how accurate it is. None of us could ever verify that, but it sounds like they tried to do their due diligence on it, and they created 3 different dialects that correspond to 3 different tribes of the game. There's this whole tribal component where you are trying to bolster your own tribe by liberating members of it, and then you're building up your village, and like that stuff is actually pretty cool. And you're I don't know, that part I like, but the language thing is really fascinating because when you start the game, it asks you to like set 3 options, and there's no context given for any of them.
Classic.
And and they're completely like, they feel totally arbitrary. The 3 options are subtitles enabled, difficulty, and search animations. And those are the 3 things that, like, point blank, you're asked to set without any context at all. And having played the game for several hours now, I can definitely state that, like, there's no way to know what those are. But like, search animations actually should have just been called Jake Rodkin's kryptonite, because if you turn off search animations, like, when you gather things or harvest things, they just disappear. They just pop off the world map.
Oh, that's fine if you turn it off.
Oh, really? You don't want? I would have assumed you would have wanted them to be on.
Oh,
so you see your hand reach out. And
I want a Far Cry hand to touch an herb.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. But I don't. It's okay if there's an option.
Oh man, see, because I'm the kind of player, Jake, as you would know, who generally wants that stuff out of my way. Who just wants everything to snap. But it was too goofy looking because this game is such a sort of AAA.
I guess that's true. In this case, the fidelity is so high that that being a main menu option that you could turn off before you see. I thought you were actually segueing into saying that there were going to be 3 choices at the beginning of the game that somehow impacted your language or like what dialect you got.
That's right.
And I was waiting. I was like, how the fuck the search animations, subtitles, and whatever the hell that other one was.
I thought there was going to be some kind of like hand language or something.
Yeah, then the game was going to be like, because you have chosen difficulty, subtitles, and search animations, we've determined that you are this culture. I was like, what amazing play so cool. is in words
through the ages. We've categorized humans.
Yeah,
based on these 3
just you don't see a hand touch an herb.
In Assassin's Creed 17, we have determined ancient evidence to find that our caveman ancestors preferred search animations, subtitles, and difficulty. Based on this, we have fine-tuned the algorithms of our latest product.
And you will be speaking in dialect B. Crafted by the finest academics.
Please learn this dialect over the next 3 weeks. I'm just a QA tester. I don't know how.
Rate this. Yeah.
So anyway, that stuff is that. The difficulty, I just left whatever the default was. And then the subtitle thing is very interesting because if you turn subtitles off, you just cannot understand what anyone is saying. It's actually really fascinating. So
so they've taken to the limit you should play Assassin's Creed in Italian thing to be like, now everyone's playing it in Italian.
Yeah, but
even Italians.
But I think the idea when you played Assassin's Creed in Italian, which I did because that was a really cool thing, you still have English subtitles on. But in this,
I would have never even turned the subtitles on and not cared.
Well, that was what I definitely was at war with myself in this game because I started with I left all those options by default because I'm like, okay, whatever they think is fine is fine. I have no way to know what the impact of any of these things are. So then I start and I'm like, oh, this is crazy. They're speaking in another language. So I played for about an hour. Then I turned off subtitles for like another hour and it was just weird. Like the story in this game is basically nothing. It's like caveman fights animals and cavemen, and
so it's probably fine without subtitles.
It's the story of that guy's life.
But the strange thing is that it's still a sort of big, expensive AAA game, which means there are a bunch of subtitles and people say things a lot. So there's just like minutes
Chris,
on end.
You're gonna miss out that a guy is like gathering forces to the north and that someone's wife did something bad and that then he's gonna bring guys to you, but then like maybe that other tribe you've never heard of is gonna flank you, right? Maybe, and it's not relevant.
That is basically exactly.
It's so fucking important that you hear all that stuff.
But the thing is, it's hard to. It's when people are just saying things for like minutes and you can't understand any of it, the impulse to want to know what they're saying is really important. So or feels really important, even if it maybe isn't in this case. And so at one point I turned the dialogue back on right in time for like a wildly gesticulating shaman guy to say, "You are the one." So like totally fucking owned. And then,
thank God you got that. Imagine the lore you would have missed if you hadn't learned that you're the one.
Yeah, and then he mixed me a like magical blood drug potion and made me drink it, and then I had like a trip and went on like a crazy drug dream, which I think is also now just like a Far Cry thing. I don't know if Far Cry 4 had this, but Far Cry 3 definitely did.
Yeah.
Where you like eat mushrooms and then go on a crazy like cave adventure. That just the exact same thing happened in this game. It's really strange how these Ubisoft franchises just settle into these conventions so deeply.
Yeah.
It is very weird. Like just based on my experience working with AAA in AAA games, like the teams are really big. It's hard to pitch stuff. And I would imagine that there must be some, I obviously don't know because I've never worked at Ubisoft and it's not like I have no way to just sort of infer what went on in the development of this game, but I have to imagine that it just gets a lot easier to get your idea for your crazy level through if you can just be like, well, it worked great, and the one we made numbers ago.
It makes you wonder if they have internal lingo for that. We're like, oh, I'm gonna do like a drug dream.
Yeah, I know exactly.
It's sort of the drug dream sort of thing, but it's like a caveman one, and we're taking inspiration from this particular cave and this architectural style and these two movies. But basically, also we got half of the mood board is the Far Cry 3 drug dream. Or maybe it's the better version where there's just a crazy executive who in every meeting is like, what if he takes some drugs and has a crazy experience? And it's like, oh man, this guy's here. This guy's in the meeting.
Yep.
Like that, there was
the spider,
like the Kevin Smith story about the executive who demands there's a giant spider battle in any movie, and then
the Batman producer,
and then
Superman.
It was the Superman thing, and then he finally got it into the end of Wild Wild West.
Yeah,
like that story. But there's a guy who every time is like crazy cave dream, got to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, like a lot of the other times that sort of thing happens in these franchises. That sequence was kind of cool and looked really evocative, and then it just kind of went on too long, all right. You can't really do anything, and you just go forward.
Chris, it's not a fulfilling experience unless it's like super long and wears at its welcome.
So, I mean, I sound like I'm really, obviously, because it's how I sound to myself. It sounds like I'm really just sort of fatigued by this game and this formula, and that is kind of true. But some of it works really well given the setting. I mean, the fact that you're in a prehistoric time and you are literally like in an entirely like a far, far, far pre-industrialized society. And you have these basic weapons that you can craft. It's like, I believe that these weapons can be crafted because they are literally just like a rock lashed to a log, and that is what it is. And so some of it actually works better than it does in a lot of these games where you're crafting things that sort of just pop out like beautiful, instruments that presumably an artisan would have had to make or something. Like, so that stuff works. And hunting animals, that makes sense. I really like the tribal warfare stuff where, like, when this game is doing good Far Cry stuff, it's really good. I had the experience that kind of sold me on the game, at least to the extent that I am sold on it, which is, not 100%, but is enough to that I played it for a while, was that I saw an enemy human, like a guy from another tribe.
An enemy human.
Destroy enemy humans. And he was like, he didn't see me yet. And so I headshotted him with a bow. And headshots are one-hit kills, at least for most enemies, I think. And then...
That's what they were explaining when you had the subtitles turned off.
Yeah. I learned it in my drug dream from my magical owl friend who I tamed in my dream, who was then tamed in real life. That happened in this game. So... Good. Yeah. So I
headshotted an enemy.
I headshotted an enemy. And then I realized the reason he didn't see me was because he was distracted because he was fighting a bear. And then I was like, oh, fuck. So now so I hid from the bear successfully before the bear was able to like transfer his like awareness from that guy to me, which was cool.
That sounds like the bear was possessing you.
What's that?
Before the bear was able to transfer his awareness to me, and I did not.
You were always in the drug dream.
Anyway, so you did not aggro this enemy.
So I didn't aggro the bear, and then as I was hiding from the bear, I got jumped by a jaguar. It was really like surprising and intense because I was concentrating so much on the bear.
You know what'd be amazing is if like at the end of every quest or whatever, somebody did like a cave painting of like what happened to you.
Oh, that would be cool.
Oh, that'd be so good.
That would be hard.
That'd
be so hard to make it good.
Jaguar coming out of the left.
It's not hard to make good when you have 50 people dedicated to making it good.
I don't know, man. A lot of the detail stuff in this game feels sloppier than the big stuff, and I think it's because it's hard to drill down on the detail stuff with a game this big.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I got mauled by a jaguar.
You got jumped by a jaguar. Let's leave it. I
got jumped by a jaguar. I speared the jaguar to death. And then like the place I ended up when this was done was on the top of a big crag, and my map, it was overlooking like a lake or a river. And my map showed that at the bottom of that body of water was some kind of artifact that I've been collecting. And so I jump off, I dive down to the bottom of the river. And then as I'm grabbing the artifact, I'm fucking chomped by a crocodile.
Yes, thank God for saying chomped by a crocodile.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Jumped by a jaguar, chomped by a croc.
Yeah, and then like through the game's kind of quick time, like last resort kind of defense system, I stabbed the crocodile to death, like in its snout, and it sort of did the thing where it like floats upside down, dies, goes upside down, floats away. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. So I get out of the river, and then I just get completely wrecked by an elk, and I die. And that was the first time I died in the game. It was like the end of this like predator chain, at the top of which was somehow an elk.
Well,
it was
an elk exists above barely alive human who survived encounters with bear, jaguar, and crocodile. The elk's like, all right, you're my guy.
I know, yeah, it's true. I'd put off healing because I was like, oh well, I'm still like at 2/3 health, so I'll wait until I'm at 1/3 health, and then
gored.
I'll give myself elk. Yeah.
And then the elk put on the artifact and walked away and was king.
Deal with its shades. Weird. And that encounter was actually amazing. Like, it felt incredible, and it gave me this sort of just pervasive respect for like nature and the animal kingdom in this game, because when you're walking around, like, it's not like humans in most Far Cry games, and maybe Far Cry 4 was like this too, but I didn't play that one, so I'm only speaking about this. But like, human enemies just behave totally differently, right? Because they walk around usually in groups. They're on patrols or something. They have conversations with each other that you can sort of hear, and they're intended to inform you. They yell things about what they're doing. They
announce themselves.
Yeah, the way that animals work in this game is just totally different, because at any given moment, like, you're just hearing the sounds of the wilderness around you, and some animals travel really, really fast, and so they can kind of come out of nowhere. Some of them are like not very strong, but some of them are way more resilient than humans are, and so it creates like the feeling of being in a very dangerous ecosystem. And the game also has a day-night cycle, so when it becomes nighttime, you feel like, holy shit, I am actually out in the middle of a dark, dangerous, terrifying place where, like, I could just get totally destroyed at any moment. It's really amazing. But then that is kind of undercut by the fact that when you die, you just respawn at your like campfire area, and then you can sort of unlock fast travel points that are campfires throughout the map. And so it kind of just,
so what you're saying is this game needs like a survival mode.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, it's sort of,
it needs primal mode.
It feels like they have a really great baseline for a really interesting kind of survival game that would be unusual among AAA games, but then it's undercut by just kind of working the same way that all of these other AAA kind of paint by numbers open world games do. And that is like that is the fundamental nature of my ambivalence about this game, is that the canvas that they created is actually pretty awesome and beautiful and feels different than a lot of modern AAA open world games do, but they just fall back on so many of the same conventions. And then obviously people who played Far Cry 4 have other complaints about this game being sort of more of a lift, but like just speaking to this game itself, that is the nature of my dual reaction to it.
How far in what direction do you think they'd have to push what they have to get it to a place that felt less like a pulled punch at the end? I mean, do you think literally pulling fast travel would be enough so that you just start back in the middle of the map?
I don't know, because the thing is, it's not a pulled punch at the end. It is never like questioning basic assumptions that are just true for all of these games and have been for years and years at this point. Right. You know what I mean?
You have your it's hard to say, like, and you have your quest system, and you have all these systems that are sort of built up.
Like, the game is constantly just like pulling you along with quests one by one, and like, I don't know. I mean, it would be really interesting to see one of these teams with like a strong design group, like with that has a lot of influence over the direction of the game, actually just pitch something different, and
or even open it up a little bit so that somebody could mod that in. Even
yeah.
I mean,
because I feel like Far Cry games haven't had that history of like modding and sort of accessibility to the kind of systems in
a world that has things like Don't Starve in it. It feels like you could take this extraordinarily high-end version of a survival situation and basically just pull the entire skeleton of the quest system and all the intelligence stuff out of it and see what happens from there. I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about with Just Cause as well, right? Of just, there's so much of a crazy active simulation running, and there's so many opportunities available that maybe it's time to stop laying the exact quest system from GTA and Assassin's Creed inside of it, or missions. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like those sort of GTA-esque mission elements are laid in parallel with, or even sometimes before, a bunch of the simulation elements are put into the game, and it seems like maybe not taking that for granted next time would be interesting, or not next time.
I wonder if these teams feel like handcuffed by the sort of expectations around what a $60 game with a campaign is. Well, like, despite the fact that Minecraft is bigger than any Far Cry game will ever be, it still feels like there are just these entrenched expectations about that is just a different thing. This is like a $60 game that you play through.
Yeah. I mean, they're like they have to be doing focus testing that tells them they should be doing these things, even if people don't know they want the other thing, right? But then, like, I was just gonna say, like, the thing I like about like a studio like Bethesda, where they're gonna do that stuff, but at least they have the sort of expectation that we'll mod it in if other people don't mod it in, which they're releasing a survival mode for Fallout 4, which is like this crazy thing.
But here's the thing, actually. Maybe Bethesda games are just the model. Maybe that's actually like
it's
a
probably
better model.
Closer,
I mean, you could, because those games are they have a set campaign and so on. Like maybe these games should just.
But they have a set campaign you can ignore, and people frequently
That's
say
what
you can just ignore this campaign, which is I know. That's why I know. I'm saying like that's the distinction.
A future Far Cry or Assassin's Creed could look to Fallout or Skyrim or something.
Yeah,
why not?
The biggest like damning thing that I encountered in this game so far that goes against that model entirely is when you look through the crafting and inventory screens, and it'll say things like, this option will be unlocked when you complete the story mission to return X to the Y. And I'm like,
the other game that did that,
what's going to happen in the story by way of the upgrade screen? Are you kidding? Like, I mean, and why not just gray it out? Like, at least
like Just Cause 3 or 4, whatever the one we just played, whatever number they're on.
That was Just Cause 3. Yeah,
Just Cause 3 did the exact same thing recently. It feels like these games just, I guess, do that where they have just a gating mechanism on the story campaign. And they're allowing you to like move outside of that for like a minute, but then of course they make you bounce back to it.
So maybe what they should try with this is remove the gating. Like don't make the gating exclusive to the campaign. Have some kind of gating mechanism where you can progress through all of the actual upgrade paths, totally independent of the story, and then also just tune it such that if you do just play through the critical path story, you will end up.
I think they're afraid that
through
people
all those upgrade
won't
paths.
ever find the story.
Who cares?
Here's what
that would be my
people
argument.
Totally
but I mean,
will
like,
though. Also,
they will because you want to. But I think that the Far Cry series in particular actually is in a really good place for Ubisoft to try something like this if they wanted to, because they have the precedent now of Blood Dragon is the weird G.I. Joe one. Far Cry Primal is the weird like. You don't understand the language. It's crazy caveman stuff, and we take all of the crafting more literally. After Far Cry 5, they could do the small weird one is just Far Cry survival game. They could say, this is the one where we flip the script, and the story is second place to just, this is the one where all of the open world stuff that you love is what the whole point of the game is literally, but it's a smaller scope version of it, and you're not paying $60. Although I guess Primal they charged full price for. I don't think they did for Blood Dragon. But like it feels if they give it the wacky logo and some weird visual treatment, fans of sort of Far Cry in its modern incarnation would potentially eat that up without the expectation of it being a mainline Far Cry game. But then they would leave themselves the ability for people to like that and expect it in the next Far Cry game. And Far Cry 6, kill me.
Man, that's a really good, that's a really good idea. Actually, if that were how much did Blood Dragon cost? $20?
I think Blood Dragon was a cheaper one. Yeah. Like do the weird
make
experimental one, but instead of
awesome.
experimenting with your creative content, take the crazy like best of breed survival sandbox and double down on that. I don't know.
The gross thing is that maybe this was that, and then it just got turned into the thing.
It could. Right? That's actually true. This could have been that.
Except that they hired all those linguists and everything. It's like, why would you do
that? But that could have been the second layer.
That could have been the second.
Oh, we love all this crafting stuff. Let's do the literal version where you do combine the stick, the string, and the rock, and you make an axe that is just a rock bound to a stick with twine. It's going to be awesome. You're going to hunt all the animals. Oh, but then this is really going somewhere. Let's. What are the cultures of these three tribes that we put in the game? Right. Blah 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 blah.
That could. Who knows? Yeah.
Who knows? We'll never know.
Yeah, unless someone writes in.
No, we'll never know because
break your NDA.
We will never know what happened because this is a video game, and by the time anyone is willing to talk about the history of this video game, no one will give a fuck.
Or they'll already make Far Cry 7
because it's Far Cry Primal. Like no one will care. By the time anyone on the team ever will want to talk about it, it's not like this is Barry Lyndon or something. Like just no one's gonna give a shit.
Ouch.
What? It's true. By the time the story is interesting enough to like, or be people, no one talks about anything in games, and by the time they do,
that's true.
No one gives a shit. Yeah, because one, there are 400 sequels to this game, and two, I don't think any game like this is notable enough on its own. So it,
yeah.
The way that it would become notable is if a writer decided that it was worth actually uncovering all the details and reminding everyone about the specific history of this specific game in this series. Like that would make it interesting. But
you could see someone doing a long form piece about the development of the like Ubisoft open world sort of dictate, like
but that is like that canvas is so big that it would be hard to do in a way that you'd get all the specific stories. Whereas like if you just said, where the hell did Far Cry Primal come from in like 2022? You could probably get it. You'd have to do so much legwork.
2022, year of Far Cry Primal. You heard it here first. Probably on Eurogamer or something.
Year of Far Cry Primal? Once a month. A feature.
Oh, I meant more just like that's the year when the prophecy will be revealed or whatever. But also, year of Far Cry Primal every week for 52 weeks. Mm-hmm. Exclusive feature about this game made 7 years ago that
no one remembers or cares about.
It's truly the Watergate of video games. Just gonna blow it open.
Oof. You guys want to take a break?
Yeah.
All right.
Good Far Cry Primal episode.
Video game. This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by Harry's. Harry's manufactures excellent shaving products and sends them directly to your door.
I heard an apostrophe in there. Shaven products.
Shaven products.
For shaven.
Yep. They will send razors and blades and all these sort of accoutrement you need to your door. They actually recently started carrying like a face wash thing, which I've been using, and it's incredibly refreshing and nice. I don't like that's not a thing that I ever thought about before, but now that it's just part of my like Harry's order, it's cool.
It's also part of your regimen.
Exactly. I basically shave like I would say once or twice a week. And so I've been using my Harry's set for that. And the nice thing about shaving once or twice a week is that most days you're just in that like stubble phase where you just kind of look slightly cooler. And so I tend to shave like on the weekends and then like, I don't know, it's true.
What, like you got like a little like neck beard action happening?
I more frequently shave the neck entirely, but yeah, often my upkeep is just shave the neck and then leave the other stuff for a few more days. If you go to harrys.com and use the offer code THUMBS, you will get $5 off your order. You can get a kind of starter set that comes with the blade, the razors, and the shaving cream or shaving gel.
The manual, shaving is cool.
It comes
subtitle when you do it.
It actually does come with a little like folded guide.
Good.
Giving you some best practices.
All right.
Yeah. harrys.com and the promo code THUMBS for $5 off. Video game. This episode of Idle Thumbs is also brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest, fastest, most convenient, most compatible, most responsive way to make your own website, portfolio, blog, or online store. We have another example of a reader's Squarespace site using the Thumbs discount code. If you go to squarespace.com and use the promo code THUMBS at checkout, you get 10% off. And one person who did that was Lars Ivar Strandin, who writes in, "Hi Thumbs, being a freelance creature and figure artist, it's essential for me to have a clean and easily navigable online portfolio when reaching out to potential clients." So he says, when being presented with a list of available free domains to choose from, I did what any responsible grown-up would do, and I registered www.moseisleycantina.space. So I went there and I was expecting it to be something weirder than he suggested, but it's just a really nice portfolio with his character art and
memorable domain name though.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it? It's probably not playing the MIDI Cantina song.
I suspect Squarespace would not endorse the use of like tacky MIDI background music,
Okay.
but I don't know.
You can't embed MIDI into web pages anymore because I don't think that the plugin types that would play those are supported.
Oh.
Because like rich media plugins, like in Chrome, I guess Flash is grandfathered in, but like
Yeah.
I don't think the QuickTime plugin or the Unity plugin and things like that work anymore. Also, I don't know if Windows Media Player on Windows 8 or 10 will play a MIDI file.
Really?
Real talk. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh man.
Fun fact, though, QuickTime will, because QuickTime for Windows hasn't been updated in a decade. So,
all right.
That's my Squarespace fun fact.
You know what has been updated in a decade? Squarespace.
Web standards, and Squarespace supports them.
Yep. If you go to squarespace.com and use the promo code THUMBS, you will get 10% off your order. And if you order for a year, you will get a free domain name. You better get on that because nickbreckon.cool is already taken and moseisleycantina.space is already taken.
All the good ones are getting scooped up.
There's not much
what
left.
is left, but I'm sure you can think of some. Yeah, find out at squarespace.com with the promo code THUMBS. Thanks, Squarespace. Video game.
Sometimes you get this sort of like bemused Goldblum-esque cadence when you do these ads. Where like, you get blade. Shaving is cool when you do it. You get the. I like to shave. Usually that's Saturdays.
Usually that's because I had an idea for a sentence and then I realized that I either forgot it already or like intended to say something different, and so I just have to like spew something out so that I'm not saying no words. That's usually why that happens.
That's probably how Jeff Goldblum works.
That's probably true.
No, actually,
that's always happening to him once every second and a half.
Yeah,
essentially for his entire life.
He's just both one step ahead and behind at all times.
That is,
yeah,
that actually feels very accurate. Yeah,
Goldblum's life is just one giant podcast ad.
That's why everyone's hiring him to do their weird web ads.
Yeah, it's actually true. That guy is in more ads than he is in films.
He's aging into Bill Murray. He's like, oh, who's the guy who's now in all the Wes Anderson movies?
Video game.
Are we back?
Oh, I think we are back.
I had a terrible realization. I had a terrible realization.
Okay,
that
I don't
think
like how terrible this is.
Times have changed for Idle Thumbs and for the Face of Gaming because we had an entire first half of this episode about a Far Cry game and no one talked about Far Cry 2 once.
Oh my God, you're right.
So that's it. Pack it up, boys. Podcast over.
Oh no.
Is Far Cry Primal the new Far Cry 2? Absolutely not. Anyway, I had to point that out that I think that we have maybe failed as people because I bet that there's at least one listener who was like, can't wait till they talk. Oh no. And then to hit video games and Far Cry 2 was never said.
Oh man.
So
yeah, that is intense.
You know what? The warmth that we feel from Clint Hocking being back at Ubisoft, presumably making the good Far Cry, is why we didn't even have to mention it because we're so comfortable in that space.
Has there been any informed speculation anywhere that he could be working on a new Far Cry game?
I don't think that there has been. There's no way he is. There's no way.
I know.
He's like he goes and has the like journeyman experience for like a decade of attempting to ship a game anywhere else than is back at Ubisoft. What if he ships a game called Far Cry 3? How happy would you be?
What, in the same way of like Ron Gilbert's like,
I will make a real Monkey Island 3 30 years later or whatever.
Clint Hocking's real Far Cry 3.
Real Far Cry 3.
God. I would play that game.
Yeah.
Far Cry 2 too. It's fine as well.
Far Cry 2 Blood Dragon. Clint Hocking.
Oh man. Weird. We brought back that engine that we made for Far Cry 2 that no one used ever again after that.
Well, I think they're still using that. The Dunia engine, that pops up when you load Far Cry Primal.
Oh, wow.
It still says
it's
that.
still there?
I think they've just been updating
okay.
it for years, yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Good.
Well, he'd be right at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Get in there, make some levels, reskin Far Cry 4 again.
Maybe that's what's happening.
Yeah. That's just all future Ubisoft games. Just use that same map. Assassin's Creed.
It's like their Dota. Or like, we got it. We did it. This one was really good. Just ship on this forever.
Yeah.
We've unlocked... Clint's back at Ubisoft, and they're like, we've unlocked a third map for Far Cry 2.
You'll never guess the topography of this map. You definitely will guess it. Well,
yeah.
Man, Far Cry 2. Good game.
Yeah.
Anyway, just had to...
No, I mean...
I got really uncomfortable during the ads when I realized that we had... Yeah. Oh, it's back.
That was an important observation.
Okay, it's back.
Yeah.
I don't know what forum I was on recently that I guess people were probably talking about Far Cry Primal, but then a sub-thread occurred that was just, does anybody else feel like Far Cry 2 is the best Far Cry? And a billion people were like, yeah, actually, I do. Weird. Where did you say that? Because it's actually my favorite Far Cry. That's weird. I never thought about it. But yeah, it is. It's my favorite.
I guess Far Cry 2's...
Yeah, I drove a Jeep off a thing, and like it was this whole like...
Far Cry 2's exceptional weirdness is probably actually now...
Yes,
been buried because the weirdness of the Far Cry series has broadened out.
Yep.
So it's no longer like a surprising zag when now it's like, then Far Cry 3 came out and then fucking G.I. Joe episode happened and then now it's a caveman.
Yeah,
so
maybe Far Cry 2 feels so grounded and not weird now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it had like, wild animals and just kind of all the things that they're doing now. Like your weapons would break and just stuff that people like didn't expect.
Well, except that all those things are totally different than how they are now. Like those wild animals.
Oh, they're different. But what I'm saying is they have like the bones of like you could take Far Cry 2 and probably just like inject
what
it
I
with
was
some
saying
of this stuff.
Is now that
but that would make it worse.
I know it would, but I'm just saying.
All that I'm saying is now looking back through like the haze of history with what Far Cry is now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They were expecting like a crisis, essentially.
Your expectations are, at the time that Far Cry 2 came out, are irrelevant because we've now had a G.I. Joe Far Cry and a caveman Far Cry. So a sort of sedate African safari Far Cry. Sure, maybe that was just one of the Far Cries now.
Yeah.
It's not like...
That's true. Your expectation has nothing to do anymore with like, I played Far Cry 1 and this is not...
To what I was saying about everyone forgetting the specific story behind the making of a game, no one fucking cares about like... Clint Hocking and Patrick Redding's rash of incredible GDC talks and sort of like what they were attempting to accomplish with that game. It's now just that other Far Cry game, I think, to some people. Like that thread you're describing where people are like, come to think of it, that one was really good. Now that I've gone through 3 or 4 other ones and didn't care about the,
I think that's true. I think that's probably true.
It's objectively true, Chris. I know it for a fact.
Nice. Nick, you played a different game.
Yeah, I'll mention this different game that I played briefly, which is the other game that people are playing this week. I guess Stardew Valley, which I didn't know anything about, and
everyone is talking about this.
Everybody's talking about this game, so I decided I'll check this game out.
It's a game that not a lot of people did. I mean, it's been known about
for years,
for a while, but it shipped and then blew up. So it's not surprising that you didn't know about it, and now everyone's talking about it. Because
I think I had heard something about somebody's making like a PC Harvest Moon, and then I was like a year.
Yeah, but if you look at like the traffic and awareness pickup for that game, it's like just a linear. It's like if the clock is at 2:00, it's that ramping up from launch. It was not like the anticipation spike of a big game where it just goes boom, it's huge, and then falls off. It's like it scaled immediately after it launched.
Yeah, no, it does seem like people just had been there was a sizable number of people that were looking forward to this like a couple months out, and then it was just recently released, and now everybody's continuing to talk about it.
So it's a Harvest Moon.
It's a Harvest
Moon-alike.
It's a Moon-alike.
A Moon-em-up.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I compare this game to that I played is Don't Starve, because it's a game I never played Harvest Moon. I mean, like, I understood what it was essentially, but not really. Like, I didn't really get the full kind of like, I mean, this game is basically sort of blatantly, trying to hit that 16-bit kind of feel and do all, similar things. But, I think the thing that people are appreciating about it is it's a little bit more open, like, because Nintendo was weird in their recent games. Like, you have to marry like a man if you're a woman, and you have to marry a woman if you're a man. But this game is just very open and kind of inclusive. And then, I mean, if you haven't played one of these games, you start out as like a guy who, I guess, inherited his grandfather's farm or something. This game is set up to be like this very comfortable, like, wholesome experience. This game was my nightmare from like the first go. Like,
what?
You get there on this bus.
Like, I inherited my grandpa's farm. Like, was it that early?
Well, I thought
my grandpa calls me Jasper.
No, you inherited this farm. I thought I'm gonna get there. It's gonna be like a decent farm, and then I'll have to like upgrade my farm. You get there, and you take this bus, and you get off the bus stop, and you walk over to your farm, and it's just this overgrown like disaster of like this enormous like 16-bit like map of just like 1,000 like Zelda bushes and rocks. And just enormous trees.
Well, otherwise there wouldn't be a fun game, Nick. You have to do the things.
It's like surrounded. Like you can barely even like get in your front door, and then they're just like derelict houses over to the left, and just you're just like in this disaster of like a Zelda
You see
town.
hell where people are supposed to see opportunity.
Exactly. Yes. I had like a panic attack when I saw all these things, because you have all these tools, and you have to just kind of like Zelda slash every bush. And it's just...
That sounds really easy.
There are a lot of bushes. So anyway, the whole game is you get there, and, you've got this farm, and you're supposed to want to make it better. But I spent like 2 days just, picking up rocks and hitting the bushes, and you have all these different tools you have to use for specific things, and like tilling the ground and like planting things. But there's no like impetus for doing any of this stuff. You're supposed to just want to like
Nick,
work.
You're supposed to think.
You're
about...
supposed to want to make
you're outraged by this notion.
You're supposed to improve yourself.
No, you're supposed to think about how nice the farm's gonna be.
And then there's all this like
think about when you get a house in The Sims and think about how cool that house is gonna be, but it's a farm.
And then one of the things that people love about this game is that like you've got like a town with people, and the people are in the town, and you have to like go and talk to them. Like you have like social.
That's a nightmare.
You have like social rankings for people. You have to like make an effort. Like everything's on like a
This
world.
sounds really good.
Everything's on a clock, so like they all have their own little cycles and things that they're doing, and so you have to like you have to go there like 9 o'clock because the shop's gonna open at 9. And you have to go talk to this person, and I'm like, God, I just want to stay in bed. I just started like sleeping over and over again. And I found myself, I was just like not leaving my little shitty barn, and I was just like sleeping and just not getting out of bed because your energy
grows back up.
Your energy, the grass starts growing back. Like all the little things I did in like the first 2 days.
You unlocked the secret ending where your character eventually dies and wills the defunct shitty farm to their grandchild, and then that's also you.
Right, exactly. To the kid that just doesn't understand the value of $1 and just spends his dollars buying bread and not actually farming. Yeah, so
is that what you were doing?
I was just going to the store and I like
you bought a bread, ate it, and slept.
As long as I'm here, I guess I'll just buy some food. I don't want to make my food, so I just bought all this food, and then I realized that I spent all my starter money that you're supposed to buy. You're supposed to buy like farm supplies with this money. You're not supposed to just spend it on food. So I had no money left to farm, so I bought like one seed, planted the seed, then I was watching that seed I would sleep. There's nothing to do, like you can't make like plants grow faster, so you have to just go water it, then get back in bed, eclipse a day, then get out of bed, go water it again. So that was my entire life, because I didn't want to engage in the social stuff
of course
at all. It was just a pain. And so all I was doing was watching this one plant grow. And that's kind of where I'm at this point.
I feel like this might be telling us more about you than about this game.
Of course,
I feel like this might be what would happen if you did inherit a farm. It would be like it's like the realistic version of Green Acres, where you just stay in bed and then maybe grow one plant, but it dies and is just taken over by the weeds.
Yeah, I mean,
and then you move back to the city.
Like the thing I compare this game to is Don't Starve, which has all of these systems except that it has this like you're gonna starve to death if you don't do these things, which just kicks me in the pants enough to actually do them. But then also I was playing that game with my girlfriend Janelle in co-op, which is very different, because then I just stay in the base and do my stuff, and then she goes out and like actually does the real work. So now that doesn't exist, I'm realizing that if I was playing Don't Starve alone, I would just starve.
You would starve.
I would be a dead man. So anyway, so yeah.
So the part of this game that's saying like, you know what's fun about this game? The satisfaction of a job well done. And you're like,
exactly.
Fuck that, I'm going to buy a loaf of bread, I'm going to sleep, and then I'm going to die.
Yeah. I just, you can move the objects in your room around, so I spent some time like moving the TV in front of the door.
Okay.
No, in front of the door, yeah. I'm just blockading. I was creating a blockade. Yeah, that's what I got.
You moved the TV next to the bed,
Valley.
and then you sat and ate a loaf of bread in bed and slept.
Basically.
Okay. This is a game that people are going crazy for this game.
Nick Breckon's definitely going crazy.
Yeah. This game also includes a Howard Hughes mode that Nick has unlocked. I want to go out to the country to get some rest. Watches TV alone with a loaf of white bread, dies. I guess that's I described Nick Breckon's Stardew Valley meme is what I just described.
That's true. Yes.
Anyway, it seems like a good game. If you like those things.
That was a representative slice of this game that is like the number one game on Steam. I think this is what people are just loving about it.
Yep. No.
If you enjoyed this game, please send us a picture of what a successful player looks like.
No, I've seen
Please
them.
Contrast it with the Nick Breckon meme image.
They've cleared every bush. And they've got perfect, beautiful crops that are just, all over their farm. They have, cows.
It's probably running itself,
even though
really.
you can get cows. I just went to the bar.
I love that we were talking about the idea of having like a more self-directed version of Far Cry Primal or something, and then Nick, as soon as you have to like take any responsibility, what? I don't know. Why would I ever want to do? So, you know.
Hopefully, if they make a good self-directed Far Cry game, it also lets you just put a TV in front of your character's bed, eat a loaf of white bread, and then the Far Cry 2 time cycling thing happens, but you see your fingernails get longer.
Right, yeah. The jars of urine just start stacking up in the corner.
The time-lapse sun spins around, but as that's happening, it's also the Team Fortress 2 sniper, Meet the Sniper video, where there's just more and more jars of pee appearing.
Yep. Anyway,
man, I forgot the Team Fortress 2 literally had the trailer with time lapsing and pee jars.
Yep.
Oh, then they made the pee jar into an item. That might be the tipping point.
That
of
was
TF2.
Actually that was the jump the shark.
When you can throw the jar of pee from the trailer at people as just a weapon you have.
Yeah. Anyway,
they should have gone the other way, which is to turn it into Far Cry 2. Man, a Far Cry 2 game where if you choose that path, your fingernails get longer is that's what I want.
That would be good.
I want you getting gnarled Howard Hughes hands.
Yeah.
When you reload your weapon, you just see like yellow 3-inch long fingernails like clicking against the surface of the gun.
Oh, gross.
Additional what? That's just players love crunchy feedback Foley, you know, like no gun actually goes, but imagine if there's also like on there.
Ugh. All right.
Eventually, the sleep button makes you sleep through 2 or 3 days at a time without leaving the bed.
Right. God, that actually would be good. Like a game that is set in the woods where you just, instead of like malaria or, you know, whatever disease is a problem, it's just your own mind that just starts the,
Instead of insanity effects and all that other garbage, if you just started like uncontrollably sleeping longer.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And like food just did not work on you as well as it used to. Mm-hmm. That'd probably be a better way to have those effects work. Just like the cost of getting rest goes way up.
Or when you get to a cutscene, you're unintelligible to everybody else instead of you not understanding what they're saying. Just your language just starts to break down. Anyway.
Want to do some reader mail?
Yeah. Sure.
All right. This was another one of those weeks where we got a bunch of similar emails, and I have also been deluged with tweets personally about 2 articles.
Are they about 2 scandals that have rocked various gaming worlds?
And various old-timey games, both of which I have some connection to, and one of which Jake does as well. So there were scandals that erupted. Well, I guess there have been articles that were published about scandals that have been erupting in the world of newspaper crosswords and professional bridge. And they're both really interesting.
Both could become high-concept, character-based thrillers.
Right. A sort of Michael Lewis, like sort of Big Short, Moneyball kind of thing for sure. Maybe not the crossword one, but the bridge one. I think
we'll see how the crossword one resolves, because you could do a like dramatization. Well, we'll get into it, but there's definitely Will Shortz versus sort of an ambivalent doucher is the way that all this article paints it.
So here's just an example of representative email of each of these. They're very short. Michael Mariano writes, just wanted to pass along this article about possibly plagiarized crossword puzzles. I have no idea if this is something that interests or affects Chris, but here's the link. It's on 538, which is Nate Silver's sort of statistics news website. That's not really a good description, but they cover politics and sports and stuff.
Yeah.
538. A lot of it is supposed to be like based on metrics or data-driven reporting.
Yeah, it's a good site. 538.com spelled out in words, and if you search for just crossword scandal, you'll find it. And then Jody Imus writes, hi, Thumbs. Since you were talking about the card game Bridge a few weeks back, I wanted to make sure you knew about this New Yorker article about recent cheating problems in the professional bridge community. Keep up the good work, Jody, Lincoln, Nebraska. And so this is a New Yorker article, and the article is called something along the lines of the cheating problem in professional bridge. And if you search for bridge scandal, you will find that one for sure. These are both really fascinating articles, and they both are essentially about the fact that we can detect cheating and plagiarism now in ways that we really couldn't before because of things like comprehensive databases and statistical and like wide-scale statistical analysis.
Pattern matching abilities are way higher.
Yeah, exactly. So in the case of
over like huge data sets.
Right, exactly. So in the case of the crosswords, what happened was it has been determined that the editor of the crossword that is syndicated in USA Today, it's found that there were a number of extremely suspicious identical, what are called theme answers in crosswords, which tend to be
identical grids.
Yeah, and in some cases, nearly identical grids, which is insanely unlikely to happen. I mean, like infinitesimally unlikely, and or infinitesimally likely, I suppose. So in a crossword, what a theme is they're generally longer answers. There are often several of them in a given crossword puzzle, and they will be linked together with some kind of clever conceit or idea. Often they're sort of puns, or like there's some kind of wordplay going on. And so because they have a funny gimmick or a weird mechanic to them, it is very unlikely that, say, 3 identical theme answers from one puzzle would be completely accidentally recreated by a different crossword constructor, 15 years later in the exact same form with the same words and same position on the grid. And yet things like that were found to have happened in this editor's crossword puzzles. They also found that many of the authors credited of those puzzles were actually simply made up pseudonyms for this editor himself. And a broad statistical analysis found that this is unique. His answers were all extremely dismissive. They were all like, "Oh, how could it not happen?"
He's
I'm
like,
surprised.
I have not ever read the New York Times crossword.
Yeah, frankly, I'm not very. He was like, "I have no interest in the New York Times crossword. I'm actually not a fan, to be honest with you."
The most notable quote from him was he said, "I have 60 people doing crosswords for me, and even if I didn't and they don't exist, that is irrelevant."
Yeah.
Like, huh.
Interesting phrasing. It was the 538 article has analysis of a lot of different crossword puzzles from different editors and publications, and they found that this level of coincidence or plagiarism only really exists in any statistically significant degree going from other publications' crosswords to this.
It was like New York
crosswords.
Times and like LA Times were the two big sources for.
Right.
It's USA Today, and then he also at once a week I think does another crossword that is syndicated out to a bunch of other local dailies.
And by contrast, there was like one example of this ever happening in a New York Times crossword, like ever. Whereas it happened a whole bunch of times in the other direction. And so
the article was also interesting because the people who collected this huge data set and ran this analysis were people who were just like, maybe we can use computers to help us become better at creating crosswords.
Yeah.
Like it was guys who just were crossword enthusiasts who wanted to get better at making their own. So they ran analysis to try and learn stuff from it. And then like the biggest quote from them was, sometimes data tells you things you don't want to see.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, whoops, we found out that crosswords that we liked were actually just ripoffs.
Yep.
Oh.
Found out that map is the same as the other map.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep. So that was really interesting. I, as someone who, as I've said on the podcast before, I do the New York Times crossword every day, and theme answer, like really ambitious themes in crosswords are incredible. I mean, like the way that a good crossword constructor can sort of produce a joke or just like a complex construction in the middle of a puzzle, and like especially with very long answers that are all related to one another, and then sometimes speak to a larger running theme in like other answers in the crossword. That stuff is really amazing.
Yep.
And just obviously you need to actually do real statistical analysis to be able to state this with any authority, but definitely just as someone who does crosswords, it's hard to imagine that kind of thing could happen accidentally. It's just intuitively, if you do crosswords, you understand like this couldn't just happen.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that people found this and, demonstrated it with something approaching like absolute proof. Yep. Did either of you read the bridge?
I didn't read the bridge.
I didn't read
yet.
it, but
that one is way crazier and way fuzzier and way more insidious. So Yeah. So the
Crazier,
crossword,
fuzzier, more insidious. That's the poster for this movie, by the way, for the big short sequel that's about bridge scandal.
yeah. One of the reasons it would be more suited to a movie than the crossword one. The crossword thing is like, okay, well, we've done statistical analysis and we found that
this guy is just a sad guy.
Yeah, it's just like a sad guy in a room making up fake people who plagiarize crosswords. But the bridge thing, Jake, you and I talked about playing bridge a couple months back, and we initially had this very ignorant reaction to some of the laws of bridge ethics, which dictate what you're allowed to say when you're bidding at the beginning of the game and so on. And we were like, why on earth is this so stringent? Why is that an ethical concern? And the reason is because, and as we learned, as readers told us, and as we should have inferred ourselves, any clues as to what is contained in your hand are incredibly valuable to your...
Right, you could... because you're playing with a partner, you could develop a system of tells.
Yeah, you're supposed to just say in a very clipped manner the exact 2 words that are the bet, because anything else could be used to pack compressed secret information about your hand into what you say.
Right.
I imagine that could be even delays in speech or pitch that you say things or speed that you say things.
And that is what this entire article is about. This article is essentially about what certain teams have of bridge players. And, a bridge team is 2 people who, in most cases, have played together for years and years and years. The 2 players who are at the center of this article who are accused of cheating, and it seems pretty clear that they have been, are in their early 30s, which is pretty young for sort of top tier professional bridge players. It's the kind of game that people play for a long time, because the article makes the point that it's a very experienced based game. Like, it's not a game with it's not like certain sports where it's sort of natural athlete, obviously still very experienced and training based, but like you sort of peak at a younger age. The bridge is like, it's a card game. You sort of build up this body of experience that builds and builds and builds and builds. And teams develop incredibly subtle signaling methods that they use to cheat that deal with like the order in which they shuffle the cards in their hands when they're given their hand, the order in which they move the cards around to put them in order. There was an Italian team in the 70s that developed a foot-based cheating method for which they ended up becoming dubbed the Italian foot soldiers. And
like weird, like taps of your like nervous tics and stuff.
Yeah. That was the fallout of that was that in addition to in professional bridge, dividers being placed on top of the table to prevent players from seeing what's going on at the table level, there are also dividers under the table to prevent players' feet from...
Wow, so you're just like fully cordoned off until play begins, basically. Interesting.
And players would do things with their eyes. They would do things with their fingers. They, teams who essentially decide to develop some kind of signaling-based cheating system just have... It's essentially a never-ending war between... the people who run the tournaments and try and prevent this, and then the people doing the cheating becoming ever more subtle and careful. And the funny thing is, a lot of these people are actually, unsurprisingly, amazing bridge players. Like really, there was they mentioned one player who was said to be just like one of the best declarers in the world, but it's got to be this is
the only edge left that they have to obtain, right? Or they feel that. In a lot of cases,
it seems like the article kind of makes the implicit point that it's sort of a cultural thing. Like this player they were talking about was like the idea, because there is still obviously an element of randomness involved in any card game, this player was so incensed by the idea that they might ever end up being beat by a theoretically less strong player that was just such a an infuriating idea that they felt the need to like grab any additional...
Even being incredibly shitty at bridge, nothing is worse than you looking at a hand and going, I think this is a really good hand.
And then blowing it.
And then you're like, I just want my partner to know that the hand that I have is very clearly exactly the hand they should be playing into, and the two of us are going to fucking... Oh my God, okay, they don't know, they can't know, they don't know, and they can't know, and I'm fucked. Fuck.
I know.
And you just want to
frustrating.
you just want to stare into their brain and be like, I have the Queen of Spades, and that's the only one you're fucking missing, and we could just sweep this shit.
Yep.
Oh, so I understand that if you're amazing at it, that impulse must just like, for some people, your brain must just like be on fire,
right?
Wanting to just like fucking throw that thought into the other person's mind because you're just enraged that you're gonna just fuck it up and you eat shit.
It's so true. Yeah, it's so true. And so they, as with the crossword scandal, one of the ways that this stuff can be determined is by doing statistical analysis and realizing that there are cases where players are playing too perfectly, which sometimes can just happen. But if there's a sustained pattern of that among a specific pair of players, that can be identified statistically over time and found to be like essentially nearly impossible to happen by chance or to happen in reasonable, legitimate play.
It raises enough suspicion that you could potentially start paying attention to them and see if there is message passing that you could then reverse engineer, I imagine.
But the thing that makes this harder than the crossword thing is that you can't you have to actually be able to point to something specific and accuse them. And so one thing that didn't happen in the past, just as with, because of the changes in technology, decades ago, it wasn't the case that every professional bridge tournament game was taped.
Oh yeah, now that's probably taped in HD from multiple angles.
Yeah, you can watch it all on YouTube, and so now you can. But the thing is, a really good player or a really good cheater, I should say, they will be very, very, very subtle with their movements. They will their cues will be things that people do just as part of being a human. They'll twitch occasionally, they'll move a finger.
Oh, but now you can make a really slow-mo blown up video of like a thumb adjusting and then be like, and then he plays the two.
So
and then I want the conspiracy bridge videos. I'm sure they're out there.
There's a guy who made a website for the express purpose of exposing this stuff called Bridge Cheaters.
Oh, I hoped it was called that.
Yeah, which is a
hopefully with a Z,
seemingly a reference to the existing bridge site Bridge Winners, which is a legitimate.
Owned. Oh shit.
Yeah, and it's actually cool reading it because there was a guy who was saying God, I thought something was going on here, and then on the drive home from the tournament, he had the Kaiser Soze moment, and he's like, "Oh my god!" And he realized what their code was. He's like, "When they move one card over this way, it means 2. When they move another card over this way, it means 3." And he beautiful minded it.
Someone else brain. With enough bridge awareness and deck awareness and stuff to be able to discern, because to play bridge, you have to remember a shitload of stuff that happens in when you play through a deck of cards. You remember which suits are getting depleted and what cards are in people's hands. So I imagine those people who have that brain are the exact people who would then also remember they shuffled a card to the left and then they played that card, because I remember at that point in the game I was hyper aware of the exact state of the deck. So your opponent is the exact person or a really attentive spectator also at that tournament is the exact brain that is going to go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That one other weird thing happened. Just one more additional detail to remember on top of the state of 52 pieces of paper that I'm remembering at all times over the course of this.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's crazy. So if you want to read that whole thing, it was published by The New Yorker, and the name of the piece is Dirty Hands, a cheating scandal in the world of professional bridge.
Dirty Hands.
Yeah. It's really good.
Dirty Hands, an Idle Thumbs podcast.
So yeah, two hilarious, quaint games with big scandals.
I love it.
Here on Idle Thumbs. Let's see here. Ron Crawford writes, problems with Myst. Hey Thumbs, I realize that this discussion is a couple months old, but I'm a bit behind and I listened to your enthusiasm for The Witness's impending release. I'm now eagerly awaiting the episode where I hear what you think about the game. During the talk, Chris, like many others, brought up comparisons to Myst. Like Chris, I grew up playing Myst and loved the world atmosphere and general feeling of solitude and isolation the world intentionally placed on the player. I still look fondly on the series, and it wasn't until listening to recent episodes of Idle Thumbs that the game actually sounds pretty critically reviled in recent years. I was hoping you guys could enlighten me as to what exactly the problems are with Myst in the critic and design community that I, as an average consumer, may have overlooked. Thanks. Keep up the good work, Ron.
I feel like Myst, I think we talked about this in brief, actually, when The Witness was new, but it feels like Myst was actually is held in pretty high esteem now compared to when it came out, and I think it's because when it came out, a lot of game critics...
Well, it depends who was doing the esteem sort of...
Sure, I remember Myst... The negative things said about Myst at the time of its release were especially, I think, from PC gaming writers who were steeped in the world of Sierra and LucasArts adventure games and who saw Myst as taking all the things out of it that they liked and it just being a sort of weird, sterile thing with no point. That was the criticism that I remember at the time, at least. Like, it's just puzzles. It's just nonsense. And it feels like Myst... The more positive things being written about Myst at this point are people that take Myst on its own terms and don't look at it through the lens of like third-person graphic adventure games. I don't know if that's actual or not. Like people like Myst is not an adventure game. The first letter of all of those words capitalized seems like the biggest like contingent of anti-Myst people on the internet.
I mean, at least it was if you're a part of the adventure game community, but I think
you still see like
more broadly than that.
People in like the rock, paper, shotgun UK journalism scene still have that attitude a lot.
Yeah, that's probably true. But I think there's something broader, which is that both the Myst style puzzle adventure or sort of puzzle dominant adventure and then the LucasArts and Sierra style graphic story led adventure with puzzles in it. I think both of those have had sort of over the last couple decades an implicit like critical devaluation by way of just sort of contributing the things that were unique about them to other genres, while those genres themselves basically disappeared entirely. Mm-hmm. So like LucasArts and Sierra Adventures contributed a sort of storytelling along with the text adventures that preceded them, contributed a kind of storytelling first mentality that actually kind of went away for a while and then in recent years has come back. And then the Myst style adventure, I think that legacy was more you are alone in a strange evocative world that also kind of lost favor in the sort of rise of action games in the late 90s, and now that is kind of coming back in a totally different form in the sort of weird walking genre or walking simulator genre, which dispenses with puzzles almost entirely and is entirely about like just you in the middle of like a
and it's
assertive environment.
One thing that you saying that just reminded me of is if you look back at sort of Lucas Sierra, like I guess Westwood and other places like that style of like King's Quest and Maniac Mansion follow-ups, and you look at Myst, those both are also just two really thick branches off the trunk of old text adventures.
Oh yeah,
they just immediately started to sort of tear it in half and go in those two different directions.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I never thought about it that way, but Myst is definitely the inheritor of the like Zork style. You are standing in
Myst
front.
Go
north, go west.
It's a slideshow where you're at a node and then you can turn 4 cardinal directions and go those directions, and then you're in a new static space that has its own visual instead of text description. But like navigate Myst like you navigate a Zork.
And then the LucasArts and Sierra etc. adventures. The thing that they inherited was the wacky item combinations, the dialogue components.
Yeah, carrying a bunch of stuff around on your person and then sort of engaging with NPCs and the story part.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I mean, it's probably self-evident, but I've never talked about it on a podcast.
I don't know what the sort of critical evaluation curve has been, but
my general feeling on it is, I don't know, it's probably pretty reductive, but like I can remember the point at which in my brain Myst became not cool, you know?
Yeah, like, that's also true.
I can remember it just more like because I didn't have the adventure game lens, like I didn't get onto adventure games until probably around 97, 98. Mm-hmm. So for me it was more just, Myst is this game that I'm playing and I don't know what games are, and then like a year later, maybe, that's not cool anymore. I'm playing Doom, but my mom's playing Myst.
Yeah, Myst being a game
that's a stupid game. My mom plays it and it's boring.
Parents play it. It was like big on Max.
Yeah. It just, Max. Ugh.
But see, that's why I don't think that the like reaction of the adventure game community in 1994 or whatever is very useful, because I think the way most people
I think it was very general.
Myst was like as a phenomenon.
Yeah,
certainly.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was like, it was multi-million selling.
Yeah.
It's the highest selling PC game of all time.
I'm not saying it was necessarily useful or anything, but I feel like
it's interesting.
Various gamers of that era, which included adventure gamers. The fact that Myst was a crazy phenomenon, but was just clicking on things or whatever.
I would love to go back and read contemporary reviews of Myst from publications like
and
PC Gamer,
back of the magazine
World,
think pieces
Edge,
about Myst and stuff.
I would love to read that now from those years.
It feels like
group discussions about.
Yeah, it feels like a game that had an immediate backlash and sort of like had a back and forth echo chamber against its mass market success in the face of.
But I bet it also had
things.
Total Champions too.
Oh yeah,
I'm
for sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
It feels like potentially like what you were saying with the rise of walking simulators and the rise of Telltale games and whatever else, coupled with indie games, a lot of indie games being about. I mean, indie games continue to be about stripping a bunch of. Stripping away a lot of the games built out of a million parts, against the Ubisoft things. It feels like part of the reason you can look back at Myst really fondly right now is because games that are literally like what Myst were are more in vogue than they were for a while. This is a game where you just do a thing. Mm-hmm. Like a game where you just do one or two things is a thing that people like again right now.
That's true.
As opposed to why aren't there 15 other things that I'm doing in Myst? Why am I not also talking to people? Why am I not also solving a huge mystery? Why,
right.
Why
aren't I crafting?
Why am I not? Ooh, gross.
Yeah. Cyan Worlds is bringing a new game out.
Oh, yeah.
Abduction.
Do you know about this? Abduction?
I didn't know about it until a couple of days ago when I saw
just visually.
a trailer. Yeah.
Yeah, Abduction. I've known about it because I backed their Kickstarter, I think. But the more I see of it, the happier I am because it feels very much... It's the kind of game from a company like this that I like to see where it does not look exactly like Myst, but it very much looks like a game from the hands that created Myst, where it doesn't look like it's literally attempting to be another Myst, where it has residential neighborhoods, or it has a house in it that is very clearly a house from Earth, but it still also has weird palettes and strange geological structures and stuff. I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. There was an artist from The Witness worked on both The Witness, or obviously The Witness, and also that game, which is really cool. Because The Witness is definitely one of the more explicit and
The Witness
obvious
is we're bringing back Myst
successors
game.
of but with a totally different mentality to its actual puzzle design.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, cool. That feels like a podcast to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Idle Thumbs. You can also send us email at questions@idlethumbs.net. We love your email. I read a ton of it, even the stuff that I don't end up having time to read on the podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Idle Thumbs. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Idle Thumbs. And we have all kinds of other podcasts as well, including Idle Weekend, which was mentioned by one of the readers in an email this week. That is Rob Zachney and Danielle Riendo talking about games, game culture, also a lot of television, films, books, other stuff they've been enjoying. It's really, really good. It's a very different vibe than this podcast, which is cool. You can find that at idleweekend.net. And the Idle Book Club has been relaunched. By the time you hear this, we should have put out our most recent episode about Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. Next month, we will be reading Celeste Ng's novel, Everything I Never Told You. I believe I'm remembering that title correctly. So yeah, you can find that at idlebookclub.com. And all the rest of our shows are at idlethumbs.net/shows.
Oh, Chris, congrats on marrying the other host of the Idle Book Club.
Oh, yeah.
What a get.
Yeah.
Weird coincidence.
Sean Vanneman. I mean the host of Idle Book Club Season 2.
Yep. Sarah Argodale.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for listening to this podcast. If you liked us, consider reviewing us on iTunes and telling a friend. That would be great. And check out our other shows. And we'll talk to you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Goodbye. Let's just describe the Nick Breckon Museum as if we're browsing it on our phones as this week's Squarespace ad.